Word Balloon is brought to you by AlexRossArt.com. You know Alex has worked for years in the comic book business, creating epic images from DC and Marvel's history, but also Star Wars, the Universal Monsters. And of course, in recent years, Alex has expanded into Hollywood with great prints featuring the Beatles, the Monkees, Monty Python, and a whole lot more. Go to Alex's website, AlexRossArt.com, and you will find prints, original art, and pieces that are priced at every price point so you can find affordable Alex Ross art to grace your living room or man cave. There's also sketchbooks and art books, like last year's Alex Ross Unseen, featuring crossovers never seen before, like a Star Wars Star Trek piece, and several Star Wars DC Universe crossovers. It's all waiting for you at AlexRossArt.com. Hi everybody, welcome back. It's Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. Nicky Wheeler Nicholson is back. You might know the name. She's been on the show before and certainly is a regular at all the big conventions. Nikky is the granddaughter of Major Malcom Wheeler Nicholson. Major Nicholson was the man who created a lot of the original concepts for national publications in the mid-early 30s, the period before Superman in Action Comics, the foundation of what became DC Comics. Titles like New Fun became More Fun, and they preceded Action Comics #1 by several years, and several issues of stories that Nikky has been representing in collections. In fact, her first book was called DC Before Superman, and it presented the stories of Major Nicholson. This Wednesday, Nikky will be hosting a panel all about women in comics from the Golden Age and beyond. And it's a great panel. It includes Trina Robbins, the wonderful creator and historian of comics. Colleen Dorn is also going to be on there, and a few other people. We'll talk about that as we get into the conversation. But Nikky also lets us in on some of her plans to further work on properties created by Major Nicholson. And I think it's a really great opportunity for Nikky to bring these characters to the present day, and she'll tell us about those plans and more. Nicky Wheeler Nicholson on today's Word Balloon. Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners, my patrons via Patreon, patreon.com/wordballoon. They all contribute, and they all help Word Balloon push forward, now in its 16th year. And all I've tried to do is expand, and certainly in the last year, because we were all locked down and I had more time, all I've tried to do is expand Word Balloon and give you more episodes and more great conversations and go in different areas, and it's through the good graces of the League of Word Balloon listeners. If you can swing it, if you like Word Balloon, I hope you will consider subscribing to Word Balloon. Even $1 a month means a lot. Thank you very much for your support. League of Word Balloon listeners, your cape and domino mask are waiting to join the League. All you have to do is make a contribution to patreon.com/wordballoon. This portion of Word Balloon brought to you by Aftershock Comics. Aftershock, of course, a great sponsor of Word Balloon for these many years, and I really appreciate it. And they're a terrific publisher with great talent, top to bottom. People like Marguerite Bennett and Donnie Cates and Cullen Bunn. There's brand new books that have just been announced. My buddy Ed Brisson will be doing a new book called Beyond the Breach with Damian Cosiero. And Lycan is a brand new book from Tom Jane, The Punisher, David James Kelly, art from Mike Carey, Rainbow Bridge from Steve Orlando, Steve Fox, and Valentina Brancati. And also, don't forget this month, brand new books like Shadow Doctor #3 from Peter Calloway and George Genti, and The Nuclear Family, a brand new series from Stephanie Phillips and Tony Chastain, issue 3 of that coming out this month. I Breathed a Body, Zach Thompson, Andy McDonald also coming out at this month as well. Plus, don't forget things like Graham Nolan and Brett Blevins' Girls of Dimension 13, and more Shadow Doctor on the way, too, from Peter Calloway. So do yourself a favor and check out all the great products that Aftershock has to offer in the month of May and moving forward as well. You'll find full story descriptions, preview pages of art, and the diamond codes on how to order these books through your local shop at AftershockComics.com. Welcome back, everybody. It's time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. I'm happy to welcome Nicky Wheeler Nicholson back to the program. Good to see you, Nikky.
Nice to see you, too. I love your opening graphics.
Thank you.
They're great.
I've upped my game. Really, Nicky's been on the show before, but this is the first time doing video. And I'm really excited to talk to you, Nick. I saw the ad for your Comixplex panel that you're doing. Am I saying Comixplex properly?
I guess.
All right, there you go. But here's the ad. It's going to be on Thursday, right at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Wednesday.
Oh, excuse me, Wednesday. Pardon me, buddy. So, and look at that lineup: Nicky Wheeler Nicholson, Colleen Dorn, Trina Robbins, Kim Munson, Mari Naomi. Mari Naomi, pardon me. What is her deal? I'm looking at the ad right there. I can't read that. Like David Armstrong. So you'll tell me about the other panelists and stuff. So we certainly know yourself and Trina and Colleen, but tell me about the other half of the panel.
Okay. So we got the idea to do this because it's Lily Renee's 100th birthday. We wanted to do a panel on women in comics, and because it is Lily's 100th birthday, we decided to do it then. So David Armstrong co-produced the documentary on Lily that came out last year, I think it was, or year before.
Okay.
And so he has a long background in comics and in film. He's been a producer, director in film for a long time, but he also is a very well comics historian. I can't remember the name of the group. There was a comic collectors group for a long time, and David was president of it, and he knows everybody. Whenever I'm with him in San Diego and we walk down the hallway, he knows everybody. And he helped me with my book, DC Comics Before Superman. He curated all the artwork. So,
oh, wow. Yeah.
So that was a big part of it. So I'm thrilled he's going to be on because he really knows his early comics in particular. And Mari, the reason I wanted her on because we're talking about the past, and I think it's really important for people to get the sense of flow that comes from the past, that creators from the past are not just back there somewhere, but that, it flows through to the younger artist. And Mari started drawing comics in 1997, and she's mixed race. She's Japanese American, and one of her first comics was about the whole discovery of the Japanese, her ancestry. Her mom was Japanese, and she went to Japan. So one of her first comics was about that whole experience. So she's really interesting, and I'm thrilled she's going to be on because it'll be a nice take rather than all of us old people to have somebody young who's working.
Sure.
So
that's cool. Is she being exposed for the first time to some of this golden age stuff, or has she always been a fan of these creators?
I think maybe so. And that I kind of wanted that to get her reaction to see what she thought about it. She really loves Mary Fleener's work. And so she'll talk a little bit about Mary Fleener. And again, that's that flow through, from the past to women who have had a long career and are still working. And then Mari as a younger person. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I think it'll be a lively group. I've had her on panels before, and she's terrific. So it'll be fun.
That's cool. Well, for the audience, both listening and viewing audience, let's start with Lily Renee and tell us about a little bit of her background. I'm assuming, obviously, that's one of her drawings. Fantastic drawing.
Lily Renee was in Austria, in Nazi-occupied Austria, and she escaped. And her story is really phenomenal. Trina wrote a book about her called Lily Renee. It's a graphic novel, and it came out a couple of years ago. And then I'm not sure how you pronounce Adrian's last name. Adrian Gruden was the director of the documentary, and she and David worked together to get this documentary out. And the whole story of Lily as a young girl escaping from Nazi Austria to England and then finally to the United States. And it's a pretty harrowing tale. And they'll talk about that on Wednesday night. And then she became a cartoonist. Nick Cardy, whose work I absolutely love.
I have a collection of his interiors and covers that I think Vanguard made years ago. I love that book.
Yeah, I really like him a lot.
Oh my God, yeah.
So he created Senorita Rio, and then Lily took it over, and she put her own spin on it, of course, and she did it for a long time. I think it was Fiction House published it. And so Senorita Rio is a really great character. So I think people are going to enjoy hearing about it. And we'll have some slides. We can't do too much because we're on cameras and people don't want to just see slides. But
sure.
We're going to have some slides so people will get a chance to see some of the comics and what they look like, that kind of thing. And
that's great. Yeah.
Interested in seeing the full documentary.
Absolutely. No, that's fantastic. I certainly hope so. And it's great to go to the event that's coming on Wednesday. All you have to do is register. It's free at, as it says, womenincomics.comixplex.com. And no, honestly, Nikki, I've seen your presentations at San Diego and the like before, and it's always great to have people like Trina on, and certainly Colleen is a great example of that. And I don't know Kim, so tell me about Kim Munson's background.
Kim, I just love. She's a friend. Kim, I refer to Kim as my art guru because her background is art history, and she's amazing. She's an incredible comics aficionado fan. And she just came out with a book called, I have to check my cheat sheet.
All good, buddy. Please.
Comic Art in Museums. And it's published by Mississippi Press. And I did an interview with her on the book, and it's a really terrific book. It's a series of essays by different people, some by Kim, and she edited the whole thing. And it's fascinating, really fascinating. I learned a lot that I had no idea about. And she's got a whole section on gosh, I'm going to have a moment where I can't think of anything on Beetle Bailey.
Mort Walker.
Mort Walker. Thank you.
Sure, buddy.
Brian Walker, Mort's son, has a terrific essay in there about how they started the whole museum that they started in Connecticut. Really interesting, really fascinating. So it's a great book, and she's going to talk about a woman that I had never heard of, and I don't know that much about her. She was an illustrator, and her name is Jessie Gillespie Willing. Okay. And she, Willing, curated a 1942 comics and art show. So that's really early.
Yeah.
So that's going to be interesting to hear what Kim has to say about that. I'm looking forward to it. And Colleen is going to talk about a woman, again, that I didn't really know, who is a big influence on her, and a really early illustrator named Rose O'Neill. And she was the one who created the Cupid. And I think it was 1909.
Wow.
And at one point was one of the highest paid women artists in America.
Wow.
And she was the first American woman illustrator to be published. I think it was 1896 or something.
Jesus.
So,
wow.
Yeah. So Colleen, Colleen really has been influenced by her. And so Colleen's going to talk about her and how that influenced her work. And that'll be interesting because Colleen's work is so stunning. Really. Yeah.
No, I've for decades. I'm a massive fan. And that's great. Now I know the name Mary Fleener. What, and again, I don't want to take away obviously from the
Mary.
Tell us about her.
I'm hoping that that once we do this, I'd like to do a whole series of these because women in comics is a pretty big subject. And what I'd love to do at some point is one with the whole underground women that participated, particularly out of San Francisco, like Trina, of course, and Lee Mars and Mary Fleener, Carol Tyler, great group of women. And it'd be really fun to get all of them together. Okay. Mary's artwork is psychedelic.
Sure, all the time. Yeah.
And just really, pow, it's out there.
Is Mary still alive or
yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Very cool person. And she lives in San Diego. And her artwork is fabulous. I met her for the first time when I did an interview for Women's E-News back, I don't know, about 10 years ago or something. And she and Ramona and Trina were all doing a panel on Wonder Woman. And I interviewed them. And that's how I got to know Mary and her work, which is really terrific.
That's awesome. That? I might have. Well, I don't know. Actually, I think I saw the last panel I saw with you was a couple years ago. I was at San Diego, and it was I think about because you also did a book about women creators of the 40s before, right? Didn't you participate in that?
I did that. That was Trina's book, and I participated in that panel. Yeah.
Okay. And Ramona was on that panel. I remember that.
Yeah.
And I want to say, oh God. Comics Buyer's Guide, right? Great woman that was in part of fan. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was Jackie Estrada, but I'm thinking it was somebody else that was another one of those like great comic fans that did fanzines back in the time and stuff. And then, but I could be wrong.
I don't remember.
Don't worry, and I know you do a ton of panels and stuff. And I'm glad that you. I don't know how many online panels have you done in the last year.
Just a few. I haven't really done that much because, as you know, I had a hurricane.
I know, buddy.
So,
I know. Literally tore up her house, everybody. It's so sad. I mean, you look good, and I'm glad that, hopefully most of the bad stuff is behind you, but I can only imagine.
Yeah. So it's been kind of difficult for me to do too much. And I'm just now getting back into doing more. And so this is a wonderful way to begin.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited for you. And honestly, I mean, I know you run great panels. And again, this has been a regular refrain on the show in the last couple of months, just because of the subjects I've been hitting. But pre-1990, really, there are surprisingly still gaps in history, and I think especially in pop culture. And we need people like yourself and the other historians to fill in the blanks, and especially at this time when I do believe that there's a new injection of women in comics. Again, maybe that's just my perception, but it seems like there are a lot of young women that are excited to start doing it now. And it's great to see that there is this past that they may not be aware of.
Yeah, that is really important to me because I want to make sure that the whole younger group that's coming up, that they know their history, not just about women, but, as you know, my passion, of course, is the Major's early comics. And I want to make sure people know those comics. I've been doing this really crazy, deep in the weeds thing. With the whole COVID thing, the New Fun reprint got kind of lost in the shuffle and didn't get a lot of attention.
No, yeah.
I got pretty bummed out about it and was feeling very sorry for myself and especially after I went through the whole hurricane thing. And, in November, I kind of kicked myself in the butt and said, okay, you need to get your act together here. So what I did is I started with New Fun #1 and I went through it page by page. And then I wrote up a piece about it. And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to go through the whole thing. So I got through all of 1935. So I went through New Fun 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay. And then I did the big book of comics that came out in between. And now I'm on 1936. And I'm going to go through the whole thing. Hopefully I'll get that done this year because I'm keeping with the 85-year thing. And then next year I'll do 1937. So it's been really interesting because I'm seeing things that I didn't see before. Going through it chronologically and reading each of the comics and then getting the next installment, it's fascinating.
I'm sure.
Really, really fascinating. And of course, I'm a total crazy person about this. So I really want people to know about just the incredible creativity that was there at the beginning. For instance, Sheldon Mayer's comics, I didn't really know his comics, but they are hilarious. I mean, they're perfectly, you could show them today and they'd be just as funny and just as smart. And the artwork, of course, is very different from what we see today, but otherwise the stories are terrific.
That's great.
Yeah, and they really you really want to know what's going to happen next. And isn't that the whole point?
100%, absolutely. And again, ironic because I'm prepping. We're not going to do it for a few months, but a couple friends and I are going to go back and look at kinescopes that are still on YouTube of the golden age of television. And I've also been, to do proper background research, have been reading and watching a ton of interviews with a lot of these writers, directors, and performers that were doing it back then. And Arthur Penn, the fantastic director, was talking about his early TV days, you know, 10 years before he did Bonnie and Clyde and things like that. I mean, really, actually more like 20 years before, starting in the 40s. And it's like we were inventing the language of television. And I can appreciate that with the Major's comics and stuff. He and those original writers and editors were literally creating the language of comic books and the serialization that we got in the day-to-day newspaper strips, but to do it in this new format. And this was all brand new. And I love the fact that this is literally years before Action Comics #1 and Superman. Yeah. And this is this. I mean, there really was this large body of work. As we know, Batman debuting the next year in 39 is in Detective 27. And obviously Detective Comics even predates Action and everything. So, I think it's terrific that you're doing this. And yes, so was Shelley's series, was it a comedy? Was it a domestic comedy?
They're very funny. One is called The Amazing Adventures of Mr. Reed, and it's this whole thing where they time travel, and it's really terrific.
That's cool.
I've been posting. I doubt anybody reads them, but they're out there if anybody's interested.
On your Facebook page, where are you posting stuff?
I'm posting it on the Majors website, on the blog.
Give us the URL, and I'll post it here.
Okay, it's long. Major Malcom Wheeler Nicholson.com.
I'm doing it as we're speaking, so that's awesome. And I'm looking at your spelling to make sure I do it right. Major Malcom Wheeler Nicholson.com. Let's see, am I doing it right?
Right.
That's awesome. Do you have? I mean, I don't even know. Are these books are they in public domain? Are they the property of DC because they're precursor? Sure. No, that's a fair answer. And is that in process of being discovered?
They're in public domain up to a point. And, it's always tricky dealing with DC.
I hear you. Yeah. No, I totally understand. And also, I mean, well, that's why I was wondering if any of the Majors concepts that you could, maybe assign them to new writers and artists and come up with new stories.
Interesting. You should bring that up, because the comic I'm going to talk about on Wednesday is Sandra of the Secret Service. And Sandra of the Secret Service had prime real estate. She was the first comic in New Fun #1. You open the page and there she was. So that tells you right there, the Major thought that was really important. And she was originally drawn by Charles Flanders, and some people have attributed the character to him, but Charles Flanders never created a character. I think he did maybe an original Robin Hood. I'm not sure, but he was mostly an illustrator. He didn't really create characters. And then it was later taken over by William Clarence Brigham Jr., who did it for a long time, but he didn't create it either. And the Major did a lot of the scripts, and I'm pretty sure he created the character because I know his pulps really well, and the character is just classic of one of his heroines from the pulps. And, my great-grandmother, his mother, was a suffragette. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, that's why we have the hyphenated last name, Wheeler Dash.
Oh, that's great. I had no idea. That's fantastic.
Yeah. You know who told me that? David Saunders told me that.
Wow.
Years ago. We were talking about something. He said, well, you know why your last name's hyphenated? And I said, I thought it was just because my family's pretentious.
It does sound good at the country club. You got to admit, that's pretty good.
And he said, no. He said it's the suffragette thing.
Well, that's even cooler. So that's awesome. I'm bringing up a new fun cover. I hope this is #1. I'll tell you in a second. Oh, there it is. Wait a minute. Stand by. Okay, here it comes. And I love this because I know I have a print of a different New Fun cover, but I love that you couldn't wait, that literally the comics would begin right there on the cover.
Yeah. Oh, that's #3.
Okay.
Okay. That is hilarious. That comic right there. That is Clemens Gratter, and the writer was Ken Fitch. And it is the most ridiculous sci-fi thing. Look at that monster, right? Is that hilarious or
yes.
what? And I thought it was kind of goofy, as I started reading it, but the more I read, more of as it went along, they did it totally tongue in cheek. I'm sure of it. I'm absolutely sure of it because Ken Fitch was an excellent, excellent writer. He wrote a lot of pulps. He was in comics for a long time. He had a long career. Really interesting guy too. So, when I did the bios for New Fun #1, there's a little bit about each of those guys. It's not huge. I had to beg for that. And so it's not, they're just short little bios, but I insisted that there had to be bios of everybody who created. So I won that battle.
That's cool. Is the cover with Jack Woods on the cover? Is that #1?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. I saw that image, and I'll pull that up in a second. There you go, buddy. Stand by. Let me do that. Wow, man. Yeah. That's I used to buy all those famous first edition reprints when they were coming out, and sadly I missed out on the New Fun one. That's amazing.
I have some. You can buy them on the Major's website.
Good to know. Very cool. Yeah. That's excellent. Well, that's the thing, honestly. So, was Vince Sullivan, I know, is an important editor that was very important to the Superman, not creation because that was Siegel and Schuster, but in terms of fostering it through Action and National back then. And, did he collaborated with your grandfather, didn't he? He
and Whitney Ellsworth were hired pretty quickly after it started, and Vin Sullivan did a lot of the covers, and at one point he was assistant editor, and so he was very instrumental in the comics, in those early comics, very much so. At the end, this isn't something that I've talked a lot about, but at the very end, during the bankruptcy proceedings, the forced bankruptcy.
Right. The Major, for people who haven't heard our first discussion or also read your book, that's how, unfortunately, the Major had to give up his intellectual properties, right? You tell the story better than I do, Nikki, please. Yesterday I was thinking about this and I thought, if this were happening today, it would be called a hostile takeover because it was hostile and they took it over. Yeah. Yeah. But during the bankruptcy trial, there's a lot of really interesting information in there. And one of the things the Major said, when he was being questioned, is the lawyers were trying to get him, the lawyers for Donenfeld and Leibowitz were trying to get him to say that Vin Sullivan and Whitney Ellsworth had done these covers as work for hire. And the Major said, no, no, sorry. They were the artist, and that was different. That was a creation, and they should be paid as the artist, as the creators. So he put his foot down with that, which meant that he owed them more money that he owed them. But, he believed in doing things the right way. So obviously Vin Sullivan and Whitney Ellsworth were very involved pretty early on. That's amazing. And, for people who have sharp eyes and pay attention to the Adventures of Superman television show credits, you'll see the name Whitney Ellsworth. And if you don't know, as Nikki was saying, he was really one of the top editors. He was the Superman editor. And in fact, when they decided to make the television show in the early 50s, he just kind of graduated up and became, certainly the liaison, but a much more active role in the productions and stuff. And it's kind of cool. And also, I always love, and it's, thank God most of them don't run some voiceover during the end credits of The Adventures of Superman. But you always hear that voice saying, Superman appears every month in action and Superman comics. And it's like, yeah, because they produced the television show. That's how big National was at that moment, that they could make their own television show.
Yeah.
And that's cool. But I also can appreciate that, again, sadly, some of these people are also responsible for really kind of running your grandfather out of the business, which kind of sucks, because he was such a believer on the creative side. And obviously, as you point out with Whitney and Vin, was a defender of creator rights. And isn't it sad? The more things change, the more they stay the same. I mean, this literally has been going on since the very beginning of comics in terms of rights and lousy deals and people taking advantage. And certainly Donefeld and Leibowitz.
A lot of people who don't know the history really well assume that my grandfather was part of the, takeover of Siegel and Schuster, and that's not true at all.
No.
What happened what people don't know is that in December 1937, when everything went down with Siegel and Schuster, that's when everything went down with my grandfather too. So he was all part of that, desire to take things over.
Wow.
And he wrote a letter. I think I talk about it in DC Comics before Superman. He wrote a letter to Jerry Siegel talking about his rights, saying, you own the rights, we'll return it to you whenever you want.
Wow.
Yeah. So, he was very clear about that. He was going by the old school pulp contracts.
Yes.
Which were first North American serial rights. So once it was published in North America as, serial, then the rights reverted back to the creator.
Yep.
So he was going by that. And, that was part of the problem.
No, I understand. And, I got to talk a few times with Dennis Kitchen over the years, and it was great to hear that he had that same philosophy about a lot of the underground comics. And it's like, we'll take the publisher rights for the first year or two or whatever, but ultimately the rights will revert back to you creators and do what you want with that stuff. So it would be fun to hear, people like Mary and Trina maybe talk about that era and, in comparison and stuff. And again, it's like, it is crazy. I sympathize, and I hope that, again, with the stories, at least that are in the public domain, I hope you're able to do something fun with them as far as...
I was going to tell you, and I got sidetracked.
All good, buddy. This is all interesting. You know that.
Sandra of the Secret Service, Lee Mars, and I are doing a new comic of Sandra.
That's terrific.
Yeah, and it's called Sandra of the Secret Service and the Cuban Affair. And I based it on a real incident. In the late 30s, mid 30s, Meyer Lansky, the gangster who ran the casinos down in Cuba, he helped the U.S. Navy, I think it was, with the spying on the German U-boats that were in the Gulf of Mexico at the time.
Sure.
So he was helping the Navy, and I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
So I wrote a script, and Lee is doing the artwork. And through a mutual friend, I got connected with Meyer Lansky's granddaughter.
Oh, fantastic. Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So, and she's thrilled. She thinks it's just great that we're doing this.
I understand. The Capone and descendants had a reality show. I never saw it, but that just blew my mind. And I can appreciate that on a historic level that, Infamous is still famous. And your great-great-grandfather, in the case of the Capones, made an impact. And I'm sure with Lansky's granddaughter, if people don't know about Meyer Lansky, think, if you know Godfather 2, the character that Lee Strasberg plays. And why am I blanking? The old man. This is the business we've chosen. Is essentially Meyer Lansky and stuff. And I always love those stories about the mob, both during the 30s and certainly during World War II, that as much as they were crooks, they were also patriots. So they really did get involved in a lot of kind of underhanded stuff in trying to help the government, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I just thought it was just a wonderful story. Also, because my grandfather's connection to Cuba, because the famous Cuba trip, and so I also added in to the story one of my grandfather's alter egos from the pulps. He had a character that he used, I think, about 15 times at least, called Major Davies, and so Major Davies is Sandra's counterpoint, her male.
Fun!
Yeah. So I gave him a promotion. He's Colonel Davies. I thought he deserved a promotion.
Well, that's nice. Exactly. I think that's very kind of you. I know. That's great. That's really exciting. Are you going to kickstart it? Are you going to GoFundMe it in any way? What are your publishing plans?
David Lloyd, God, love that man.
I love David. Go on.
He's publishing it initially in Aces Weekly. So it's going to be out in July.
Oh, that's fantastic. Mm-hmm. Well, Nikki, you got to come back when it's on Aces Weekly.
Lee and I are having so much fun. And it's just great. I'm really excited about it. And we've got a couple of other stories that we're already working on as follow-ups. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Outstanding. Yeah. I'm so glad to hear that. And that's terrific that you're doing it with David. I'm trying to remember the last time I talked to David. It might have been 2019, but I've certainly discussed, Aces Weekly and the variety of comics that he provides there are just great.
Fabulous. I told David that he has that same entrepreneurial spirit that my grandfather had. Really a great visionary, a creator himself. And I just think he's just wonderful. So,
I'm with you, buddy. Yeah, absolutely. For people who don't know, this was Nikki's book, DC Comics Before Superman. So, definitely check that out because, again, it gives you the background. It was... Nikki, and forgive me if I'm misremembering, it was a combination of both the comics and the Major's biography that you worked on, or are those two separate books?
Yeah. No, I'm working on a full biography, which I've had a little bit of trouble with because I don't really want to do an academic biography. I'm a writer myself, and I can do the academic thing, but it just doesn't interest me. So I had to figure out a way to make it a little bit more creative. So I've used some incidents that as I've gone through this process and found out things about my grandfather, it's affected my life. I'm sure. I'm the only child of my mother and my father. And he had a second family with 5 children, and she had a second family with 3 children. So I've had a weird kind of background. And it's my grandfather's life has been a touchstone for me in a lot of ways because I really identify with his creative spirit. And I also identify with the injustice that occurred in his life. And for a long time, I couldn't figure out why I was so passionate about that. But then I realized it because it touches something in me. So, it's a personal thing for me because of what happened to him. Filtered down to what happened to me in my life. And so I feel very strongly about it. And that's how I'm weaving in some of the way I discovered things about him and my own adventures. I've been to Cuba. I've been to Paris.
Wow.
Yeah. I've been to London. I've gone to a lot of the places where he was. And so I've had a lot of adventures. And So that's coming together. But DC Comics Before Superman, I did a shorter version of his biography. So there's a good through line there for people who don't really know about him. It's a good way to get started. And you can also get that on the website.
Excellent. Let's put that up again once again. Absolutely. So there you go, everybody. MajorMalcolmWheelerNicholson.com. That's where you go to purchase some of this stuff from Nikky, and that's great. And also, no, I understand. And again, this is a guy that easily could have been overlooked, and I think is in a lot of ways. I mean, I know in older. Maybe Jules Pfeiffer, I don't even remember the comic historians that at least mentioned the Major. But it really is such a brief footnote, and it really took like your efforts to really flesh out the story. And in comparison, I think he did more, but much like Ian Fleming having real intelligence and spy adventures during World War II, the Major was literally this like kind of guy who, I say this in the best way. I don't mean this in a negative way because I think the phrase has become kind of negative, and sometimes it's justified. But like a mercenary or a soldier of fortune. How would you describe the Major? He
was actually in the Army.
Well, that's true too, of course. Yes.
Yeah. So he was actually in the Army, but he was in intelligence work, so. A lot of the pulp stories he wrote that then became comics. That's why I did it as based it on that concept of the pulps and how they became comics. And he had a lot of those adventures that he based those stories on. So, he had a very adventuresome life.
Okay. Well, and we talked about, again, people might know the Bob Marley song, Buffalo Soldiers. And the Major, wasn't he in charge of the Buffalo Soldier Regiment?
He was in charge of Troop K for the 9th Cavalry in 1915. Wow. And he took a group of those soldiers to the Philippines. And this is 1915. So we're talking, the whole racial attitudes of that period. And he saw very quickly how these men were treated, and he didn't like it. And so he challenged his superior officer to a contest between the white guys and these black guys, his troops. And he told his superior officer, I can get these guys up to speed. And we're going to have a contest. So all the big brass came, and it was this huge, big deal. And he did. His guys beat the pants off of these other guys. And what they were doing is they were a machine gun troop. And what they would have to do is they would run at a gallop and jump off their horses and set up the machine gun in a matter of seconds. And they beat the world's records. It was in all these books, and it was in the newspapers. And needless to say, the superior officer wasn't too fond of him after that. But he believed very strongly that the Army should be integrated. He did not believe in segregation. And this is in 1915.
Where it didn't happen until Truman in 1948. So it took that long for them to really fully integrate the Army and stuff. No, it's honestly, that's amazing. And again, I just, having read your book and everything, I really got to, see some of those first comics. And that through line from the pulps, everyone at least is aware of the basics of it and the precursors of the superheroes and the Shadow and, some of the other great heroes, the pulp heroes and stuff. And that's why I love reading those first initial comics, because along with Superman, you had Slam Bradley, of course, the other Siegel and Schuster creation. That thankfully, I'm glad when DC kind of brings him back and then dips into that history. Or Dr. Occult, a very interesting, almost a Dr.
Occult.
So do I, and kind of a precursor to Dr. Strange in Marvel by several decades. And it's like, no, these are really the building blocks. And at the same time, I would not like to see your ability to tell new stories killed by that. But I, as a reader, appreciated when the DC Universe would kind of acknowledge these guys. In fact, last year I was talking to Matt Wagner, and how Matt Wagner really, especially in that Sandman Mystery Theater, but even other comics that he's done at Vertigo, dipped into the DC Universe. And I'm like, how'd you get permission for that? He goes, well, I just did it. I didn't ask. The art was done. The characters are there. There wasn't much they could do about it, but just go, all right. And, but Dr. Occult and these original DC heroes are just kind of roaming around the 30s along with Wesley Dodds, the Golden Age Sandman. And it's like, no, that's cool. It's like, what happened before? Even from a fictional standpoint, what happened in the DC universe before the rocket lands on Earth and the Kryptonian is here? Yeah.
Slam Bradley was created by my grandfather.
Oh, forgive me. Wow.
Yeah.
Shame on me. Oh, shit. Well, then I'm sorry, Nikki. What the hell?
No, that's okay. A lot of people don't know. They finally, the DC lawyers finally updated the Wikipedia page on Slam Bradley. My grandfather came up with the idea, created the character, and then he turned it over to Jerry and Joe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they then drew it and wrote the stories, and so it was his idea. And I always love to show. By the way, Joe Shuster's art in those early comics. Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Sometimes I just want to cry. It's so I just love his artwork.
I'm with you.
Almost immediately, going through chronologically with the comics, you start with, the first, they appeared in the October issue of New Fun. And you see the progression almost immediately. Joe Shuster's art just takes off. I mean, just almost immediately. Really, really stunning work. And it took Jerry a little bit of time to kind of get his feet with the scripts, but, he was on it pretty quickly too. So, I mean, my grandfather knew right off the bat, those guys were really talented.
That's awesome. And again, we mentioned Shelley Mayer and Ken Fitch, right? Am I saying, isn't that his name? One of the writers?
Ken Fitch.
Yes. Okay. Were there other Golden Age writers or artists that started with the major and then obviously progressed as the 30s went into the 40s?
Yeah. There's so many. One of the artists that I really love, who had this really quirky comic, Tom Cooper, had Captain Spinnaker, and it is the quirkiest thing you can possibly imagine. And it gets quirkier and quirkier as you go along. And I really like it a lot for that reason.
Was it like a merchant marine? What kind of adventures did Captain Spinnaker have?
He's this explorer who has a submarine, and he has this I don't want to use the word Eskimo because that's
Inuit, I suppose. Inuit might be the proper term.
Whether it was an Inuit or not, I don't know, but he was of native blood, and he's Captain Spinnaker's sidekick. And what I really love about it is there's no stereotypical language junk going on. He just speaks in English, so that's really nice. And he's actually the smarter of the two.
Oh, nice. Wow.
Yeah, and it's a very funny comic. And
Nikki, it's comics like that, even, and I'm glad to hear that there were no slurs or anything like that. You'd have to kind of get a little or at least put things in context, because I really think foreign intrigue, and a lot of what the major was writing about was foreign intrigue. I really think there's an opportunity to tell those stories today and tell them in the proper context of, okay, we don't have the same language, but these natives of their land are certainly more knowledgeable about their surroundings than the white man that suddenly shows up. But you can still tell interesting stories. And God, I think, Ram V, I don't know if you're aware of him, great Indian writer. He's based in London. And I never remember the name of his book, but he did this amazing vampire book of a British vampire going to India during the 19th century and kind of twisting the usual white god coming to the foreign land and teaching the natives what to do. And it's like, this is a really interesting opportunity to tell foreign intrigue stories. And again, not shirk the responsibility or miss the advantage and take advantage of the chance to write these things in a better context.
Right.
So, yeah. No, I think that's great. I hope we see Captain Spinnaker stories. I think that would be terrific. Well, come on, submarines. Good Lord.
I'd love to bring those back because they are just hysterical. I mean, and they're funny. They've got all these funny little inside jokes in them. For instance, one of the ships is called the Lollipop.
It's a good ship.
And the good ship.
That's great. That's fantastic.
Little tiny thing in the corner that maybe you wouldn't even notice. So I love stuff like that.
Oh, I'm with you. Absolutely.
I think that's a creator just kind of having fun and not caring whether anybody sees it or not, but enjoying themselves.
Yeah, things were fast and loose back then. And also you figure both the writers and the artists, and again, I use this analogy of the golden age of television. And one of the great writers was saying, hey, at the time, television was only paying nothing. And, like he said, one of his one-act plays was adapted for television, and he got a $25 royalty because it was a script that was in Samuel French, which is where plays are and scripts are normally that's where they're published, and that's how other theaters, regional theaters, can get the rights to do them and stuff. And the author gets a royalty, and it's like nobody in radio or in Broadway wanted to do television because it really was just peanuts as far as money. So who do you go to? Well, you go to the young, hungry writers and artists in the case of comics who they want to break in. They're not in the slicks. They're not Norman Rockwell in the Saturday Evening Post, or they're not even at the comic strip level where their stuff is being syndicated and they're making big money. So you're talking about Noel Sickles and, people like, and I'm blanking, Terry and the Pirates, of course.
There were some older guys who were established artists who were in some of those early comics, because don't forget, this was a depression. So people needed money. And when they heard through this is a small community. So everybody is all in this, 42nd Street, Park Avenue, Madison Avenue, right in 3rd Avenue, everybody's like in this tight little area, and they all drank in the same place.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the art school was upstairs from the subway, so everybody's like, they're all here and everybody's like, hey, this guy's paying a few bucks, so there are some older, more established artists in the early ones who were looking for work.
Sure. Extra money. Or just money, period, income. Absolutely. No, I can appreciate that. Now, have you, Fred Van Lente and Ryan Dunleavy did this incredible comic book history of comics where they really do tell the story in comic book form. And as you point out, that everybody really was in that same area of New York.
Are you talking about, did you say Fred Van Lente?
Van Lente, yeah. Have you read it? Have you read their?
Yeah.
How do you think they did?
He got a few things wrong about the major, which I told him about.
Okay.
And he was very nice about it. I read it. It came out a number of years ago.
A couple of years. Maybe even longer.
I think they're great. Their graphic novels are just wonderful. I appreciate them a lot.
They just wrapped up one about the history of animation.
Oh, so wow.
They did the same thing, on animation and stuff. No, they're really, Fred's amazing, and Ryan, the artist, is incredible as well. And they're good guys. They're really good guys.
Yeah, anything they do is good.
I agree. It's funny. I was watching this weekend. Mark Miller's Netflix series dropped, Jupiter's Legacy.
Oh, really?
And it really does, from a time period standpoint. The story starts in the late 20s.
Oh, really?
And the Superman character that Josh Duhamel plays, you see his early days before he gets his powers. And he's working for a steel company in Chicago right before the stock market crash. And I found that really interesting because there really is that pulp era that the story begins in. Yeah. And it's good. I don't know if you were aware of it.
No, I sort of, but I haven't seen it yet.
Just dropped. It just dropped on Friday. So, are you watching any of the modern superhero stuff? It's okay. You can say no.
Not a whole lot.
That's fine.
I'm not a big fan. I'm basically your PG girl. I'm just not big with all the violence.
Okay. That's cool.
I just can't deal with it.
That's all right. Well, and again, the major, and especially when comics began, that was just one of many genres. And again, we're talking about the comedy that Shelley Mayer did, and all romance, westerns, everything was in these initial comics, and that's why I love those reproductions of the original comics that literally even had the ads, everything, and also I love, even though they're terrible, those 1 or 2 page text pieces that were in comics so that the comic would be considered a magazine, and therefore for people who wanted to subscribe, they could do a postage rate that was cheaper than if it was purely comics wall to wall. And, Stan Lee's first published work at Timely was one of those text pieces about Captain America. I think it was in the 3rd issue of Captain America. And really, I love reading Golden Age comics and even seeing them. And they're westerns or they're spy stories or it's a fast murder mystery. They're crazy.
Ads are pretty funny, too.
What's that?
The ads are.
Oh, God, yes.
And it's also, you can really get a sense of the depression, too, because of the ads, what they're advertising. And a lot of it is about how to get work, how to gain a new skill in order to get work. So that's interesting, too.
I agree. Absolutely. You ever see the movie? It's from the 70s, Hearts of the West, and it's Jeff Bridges, and he answers an ad for one of those, correspondence.
Yeah. I saw it a long time ago.
That's all right. And I love old movies, and so I'm constantly watching Turner, and and I have all the streamers that show old movies. I'm right there with Criterion, and even Amazon Prime, thankfully, shows a lot of great old movies. But no, I love that, and I love how for people listening or watching, in Hearts of the West, it's a great story, and he starts off and he wants to be a pulp writer, but finds out that the school is kind of BS. And he wanders into this area where they're making 1930s westerns, and he just becomes a writer and an actor in these westerns and stuff. And it's just terrific. It really does kind of capture, I think, the creativity of the moment.
He's such a good actor.
Yeah, absolutely. And Andy Griffith is really great in it too, and kind of an older cowboy actor and stuff. And no, I think it's a really great little movie. And again,
I have to go back and watch it.
What's that?
I'm going to have to go back and watch it again.
Yeah. No, it's worth it. It absolutely is worth it. Definitely. So, and also, God, I love the Robert Howard movie, The Whole Wide World. It's Renee Zellweger and, Vincent D'Onofrio plays Robert Howard. And again, Howard was a very different person, but he and the Major obviously kind of wrote in the same genres and everything of the day.
Right.
So
there were a lot of amazing pulp writers that a lot of people have no idea about. And can you imagine as a writer, for me, thinking about? I love the pulps, and
me too.
Thinking about being able to make a living writing, is just. That's great. And
Yeah.
there were thousands of magazines. I mean, just thousands of them. And if you were a good writer and you wrote pretty quickly, you could make a decent living. My grandfather did. He got his family to Europe on his pulp earnings before the stock market crash. So,
Pumpkin Time wants to know about pulp titles. He was born in 1994. He doesn't know any. And it's funny. He says, aside from Flash Gordon, technically Flash Gordon was really a comic strip. It wasn't a pulp. I don't believe they made.
Wow.
And maybe they did. Maybe King Features also did prose stories, and certainly they did big little books of the day. But when we say pulp heroes, we're talking about characters like Doc Savage, The Shadow. I'll let Nikki rattle off a couple of her favorites.
Those are the most well-known, but you really have to look at some of the writers to know more. And my grandfather was not as prolific as a lot of people. Some of the pulp writers wrote hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. There are reprints of a lot of those pulps, and there are a couple of William Patrick Murray. He has a lot of reprints that he has done of different writers. Ed Hulse has done a lot of the reprints of the Westerns and is very knowledgeable about that. Rich Harvey has a site with a lot of reprints of pulps, and he also puts out a magazine too that you can find online. I can't think of the name of anything right now.
No, that's great though, and I mean, that's a great Google place to start in terms of those things. And yeah, Will Murray, I think, is a great custodian of the history of the pulps, and also has written modern stories about some of these pulp characters.
Yes.
So no, honestly, man, and really, Google is your friend. I mean, really look up on Google, look for pulp magazine heroes, you'll find dozens.
If he's on Facebook, tell him to to message me, and I'll send him in the right direction for to pick up some pulp titles.
That's great. That's excellent. No, I detective characters, everything that the pulps represented, much like comics and stuff. There are a lot of great heroes to follow, and men and women. I know Candy Mason is a female detective of the pulp era and stuff, and actually had her own radio show for a short time as well. I'm a big, you see, as Nikki, I'm sure I'm guessing you might be an old time radio fan. No,
to a point.
Okay.
I've been so focused in the last 10 years, particularly on pulps and comics, that I really have had no chance to do much of anything.
That's cool. Well, again, honestly, and again, as I said, there are pockets of history that are just, people either just don't think about them, or and reserve the brain space, or have the intellectual curiosity to pursue these things. But there really are, in the midst of the pulp era that started in the teens, and probably earlier than that. But just there are some amazing characters that were created that might be in the public domain now, and I absolutely would point to anyone to just do a Google search of some great pulp heroes. And I think there are great character inspirations within those. And God, we mentioned the captain, the submarine captain and stuff. God, there's just something really iconic about that pre-atomic age and beyond period that's called diesel punk. And is that period?
Yeah.
Between World War I and the atomic age. Yeah. And there's just such a great group of heroes and ideas to call. And when you think of that submarine captain and stuff, God, those old deep sea diver giant helmets and the suits they would have. I mean, that stuff just begs to be drawn in a comic book, and you get a great underwater adventure or something like that.
Yeah.
So I just think the opportunity's there. I just literally bought an anthology of Diesel Punk stories from new writers that I've been meaning to sit down and read. So. Yeah.
One of the comics that Clem Gretter and Ken Fitch did, besides the one that you showed, Don Drake on the planet Sorrow, the other one that's really hilarious that they did from the very beginning was Super Police 2022.
Yeah.
Oops. All right, it might be 2023. I can't remember right now.
Hilarious.
It's like right now.
Absolutely.
And it's totally ridiculous.
Well, Doc Smith.
The machines are ridiculous. Just the whole thing is.
But that's fun, and the visuals you can create from those thoughts are just, and of course, even obviously the cover art and when they did do interior illustrations and stuff. No, that stuff is great. And it reminded me, as you said that, like Doc Smith, the great pulp writer that created the Lensmen, and everyone knows that, like, if you really know your deep history, the Green Lantern Corps was inspired by the Lensmen. This group of space, intergalactic space cops, just like Space Police. And I'm sure that Space Police was a poor man's Lensmen, because that's what they were, and they were essentially just pulps disguised as science fiction. And God, I was on a television show years ago called Prophets of Science Fiction, and so many of the great Asimov stories and other sci-fi writers, they really were. They were pulp stories with some rocket ships or whatever, time travel machines, but they essentially really were just straight up pulp novels, or detective stories with a sci-fi twist.
Yeah.
Cool stuff. Absolutely. Well, Nikki, we'll point everyone to Wednesday night and what you're doing there. Again, it's at Comixplex. So go to womenincomics.comixplex, and that's comics with an X for the audio audience, and Plex. So it's COMIXPLEX.com. And you'll see Nikki's panel that's running Wednesday night, starting at 8 p.m. Eastern to 9:30, and a great group of people to discuss some forgotten women in comics that I certainly hope your awareness will improve and make us want to seek out some of the great work. And again,
I didn't even really talk about Trina, and she's like the goddess.
Oh yeah, well, we love Trina, absolutely. I mean, you'll forgive me because shame on me for we can talk a minute about Trina. Trina's amazing. Please.
Besides Lily Renee, she's also going to talk about Tarpe Mills and Miss Fury. So
great.
That'll be fun too. And Trina is, anything you want to know about women in comics, you got to have Trina,
No, I hear you. Actually, Nikki, and I'm sure you do it anyway, but I'll say it on the air. I've been meaning to have Trina on the show for years, and I haven't. So anyway, you could provide an introduction. It would be great to have her on.
Yeah, no, she's fabulous. I love her to pieces. And I refer to her and Ramona as the Grand Dames. So.
Yeah. Ramona, how's she doing? I mean, she's in her 90s, and I don't want to get personal if there's any issues. But
I think she's doing okay. She's done a couple of commissions for some people recently. So
that's great.
Yeah.
At New York years ago, she would just have finished, 8x5s or whatever even. And it was great because I know she's so well known for Aquaman. She had this wonderful Namor that she did. And I'm like, well, I got to have that because that's great. That's like seeing a Batman artist do Moon Knight or, a comparable character from the other company. And also... she did a lovely Metamorpho for me years ago, and I did. They're two of my favorite pieces, and I'm so glad that I actually have some real original, Ramona sketches and stuff. That's great. I'm more of a commission art guy where I'd rather pay for them to draw something for me rather than purchase a page, because to me that's almost like a private performance. That's like asking Springsteen to whip out the guitar and just sing a song for you,
That's one of the things I love about comics is that it's one of the few places left where anybody in the public, a fan, can go to a convention, walk down the aisle, and talk to a creator, an artist, and with very little money, get an original piece of art. So
I totally agree. Yeah.
I that's one of the things that I really love.
I'm so with you. Tomorrow night, technically tomorrow, it's my 16th anniversary doing Word Balloon. And
wow. Well,
isn't that crazy? Thank you very much.
Tomorrow's my birthday.
Hey, happy birthday. Hey, that's wonderful. Very nice. Wow. So I'm going to actually show Tom King, the former Batman writer and currently writing Adam Strange and a Batman Catwoman book, among other books. He's about to start Supergirl. He's going to interview me, which is very nice. But I figured I would get out some of my commission art, some of the stuff you can see in frames on the walls and stuff, and I'll take photos of those. But also a lot of loose art that I haven't had the chance to frame yet. And oh god, I mean, really, I really have to get on. And I've got frames sitting waiting to be filled. And I mean, my God, I'm going to be like Oscar Madison and just have tons of comic book art on all the walls and stuff. And I really love it because when friends come over and they first see them and stuff, they are really like impressed. And it's like, oh, this is like really like great art. And it's like, yeah. It really is.
Yeah.
So we're very fortunate that we're aware of it, and it's great to share it with people that way. So I'm looking forward to doing that tomorrow night. But Nikki, again, Wednesday night, Comixplex.com, womenincomics.comixplex.com. All you have to do is register there, and you'll be able to watch the event, and that's great. I think I'm so glad that you're involved with this, and I mean, I'm glad it was this your idea, this panel?
Kind of, yeah. They wanted me to do a Women in Comics, and it just kind of came together. And with Lily, it just seemed logical to do it this way. And like I said, I'd like to do some further things with women from the 70s, the underground comics, a whole panel on Wonder Woman. There's lots to do.
Oh my God, yes. And I don't remember if we talked about this in our first conversation, but I'd love to know more about Dorothy Woolfolk, the romance editor at, I believe I'm saying her name right. Maybe I'm not, but the romance editor at DC.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Sure. That's something I don't know.
And a woman that I got to meet at a couple East Coast conventions is Barbara Freelander. And Barbara was an associate editor at DC on the romance comics in the 60s. Yeah. And it was really great because there were great artists like J. Scott Pike who didn't want to do superheroes. And he primarily worked for the romance end of DC Comics. And, as you, I'm sure, know, John Romita Sr. did amazing romance comics.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
have you ever talked to Jackie Nodell?
No, is that Martin's daughter?
Granddaughter.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah,
go ahead.
She's very knowledgeable about the romance comic.
Oh, that'd be cool.
You should talk to her.
I'd love that.
She's fabulous. And that's her area of interest and her area of study. And
wow.
Yeah.
I would like to talk to her because I did get to meet Marty a lot. Marty, for years after comics, he went to work for one of the big advertising agencies here in Chicago, Leo Burnett. So he had roots here. And he and I believe his wife was Jackie as well. Or I can't remember. No, I can't remember her name. Shame on me. Because they were adorable together. Yeah. And then sadly she...
Well, either Danny or I can put you in touch with her.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you. Because, I mean, I tried to get Marty on, to even do a quick floor interview at a con. And after his wife died, he's like, I really appreciate it. And he was so sweet about it. He's like, my heart's just not in it anymore. He goes, I do the sketches, and is either his kids were there or maybe it was Jackie. I don't know, but it was really sweet that I was so glad that he was there the years that he was, and I got a quick Alan Scott Green Lantern that's 5x8 or whatever, and then also a couple prints that he made of Golden Age characters that he would draw. Great stuff, man. No, he was incredible, and he's one of those guys, much like the Major, that people know the Bill Finger story with Batman. And thankfully, in the last 15 years or so, they've become more aware of Finger's contributions to the Batman character, Jerry Robinson as well. So it's really important, and that's why it's great that you're doing this panel focusing on the women of the Golden Age that absolutely deserve more attention and appreciation for what they did.
Yep, it's one part of a big picture.
Absolutely. Well, again, everybody, go to the Majors website. I'll throw that back up again.
Books.
Right? Major Malcom Wheeler Nicholson.com. And man, order some books from Nikky. And I'm sorry, I want to get the cover once again. There it is. DC Comics Before Superman. That's the first book, and more to come. I can't wait to talk to you about what you're doing with Aces Weekly. So that'll be great.
Yeah. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely. Well, good luck on Wednesday. And as always, I appreciate you talking to me tonight.
Great to talk to you, John. We could go on forever.
No problem. It's all good. And I'm glad that we spent the time that we did. Are you doing any live event? Have you planned on any live events for this year, or are you still kind of wait and see?
I'm at an age that it's a little. I'm going to wait till things settle down.
I understand. Have you had your vaccine? Have you had your shots yet, Nikky?
Yeah.
I got mine too. In fact, Thursday is my the grace period's over, and I can, I cannot wait to get to a pool because I'm a beach ball right now. I need to drop some pounds. I got a title fight coming up. I got to get in shape. So,
right.
Exactly. So, everybody, thanks a lot for watching tonight.
Thank
Tom
you.
King. Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Nicky Wheeler Nicholson sounds like she's got a full plate for the rest of 2021 and beyond, and really looking forward to this panel on Wednesday night that she'll be hosting. Later this week on Word Balloon, I mentioned that Tom King, of course, is going to be joining me tonight on a Word Balloon Live to celebrate the 16th anniversary of Word Balloon, which is today. Thank you, everybody, for your great support over these 16 years. It's meant a lot, and what can I say? I couldn't do it without you. I'm so glad that you're along for the ride and enjoying the show. And I can tell you, I'm not slowing down. There's lots of great stuff coming up. On Wednesday, I'll be talking to John McCrae, a wonderful creator, and we'll be doing that on Wednesday afternoon. Thursday, I'll be talking to Erica Schultz about a new Kickstarter that she's getting underway. And also on Thursday night, it's To the Outer Limits with a review of 2 more episodes from the second season with me, Gabe Hardman, and company. And Friday, Ed Piskor is back. Pittsburgh's own Ed Piskor is back with a brand new and horror anthology series called Red Room. And we'll be talking about that. And, of course, his excellent YouTube show that he does with Jim Rugg, Cartoonist Kayfabe. It's an excellent, excellent show. And I'm such a fan of their comics and now their YouTube shows as well. So it's going to be great catching up with Ed Piskor to close out the week on Word Balloon. This portion of Word Balloon brought to you by Aftershock Comics. Aftershock, of course, a great sponsor of Word Balloon for these many years, and I really appreciate it. And they're a terrific publisher with great talent, top to bottom. People like Marguerite Bennett and Donnie Cates and Cullen Bunn. There's brand new books that have just been announced. My buddy Ed Brisson will be doing a new book called Beyond the Breach with Damian Cosiero. And Lycan is a brand new book from Tom Jane, The Punisher, David James Kelly, art from Mike Carey, Rainbow Bridge from Steve Orlando, Steve Fox, and Valentina Brancati. And also, don't forget this month, brand new books like Shadow Doctor #3 from Peter Calloway and George Genti, and The Nuclear Family, a brand new series from Stephanie Phillips and Tony Chastain, issue 3 of that coming out this month. I Breathed a Body, Zach Thompson, Andy McDonnell, also coming out at this month as well. Plus, don't forget things like Graham Nolan and Brett Blevins' Girls of Dimension 13, and more Shadow Doctor on the way too from Peter Calloway. So do yourself a favor and check out all the great products that Aftershock has to offer in the month of May and moving forward as well. You'll find full story descriptions, preview pages of art, and the diamond codes on how to order these books through your local shop at AftershockComics.com. Thanks again for listening today. Until next time, Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions, copyright 2021. Stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy, get vaccinated.